I want to start the episode with a quick minor shout out to an Instagram page. Now, I'm not an Instagram user. You could probably tell by the way I said Instagram page. I don't think that's what they call them. But I do have Instagram on my phone. And sometimes I open it for whatever reason. I don't know, because I don't regularly check Instagram. But I opened it and I was met with a beautiful photo of gorgeous backlit shell stones. It was an image of just white shell stones, and underneath was a backlight, and you could see the grain, right? You could see the lines in each of the stones, and it's a very beautiful photo. And I was not surprised to see who it was, but Danger Monkey Go Stones. That's the IG at Danger Monkey Go Stones. And I mean, this is some of the best Go photography I've seen out there. And there's not much, right? I don't think Danger Monkey Go Stones, aka Solomon, who runs a Paducah.club, incidentally, that Instagram is just great for Go photography. I love it because he deals with vintage Go equipment and repairs and refurbishes them. And so he has a lot of material to work with. And a lot of the photos are just spectacular. And I don't, like I said, I don't think he's a professional photographer, or that's like his primary trade or anything. But it's just these photos are great for Go. I feel like we need more Go photographers and Go photography out there. But it's like two niches like trying to overlap. And I get why we don't have that many, but it's weird. Like I want really nice Go wallpapers, and it's so hard to find. I feel like we should be able to find some nice wallpaper. There's like a few. There's like a few of options, and that's it. Like it's like the rest of them are like stock images, and they're not very good. So I just wanted to give that Instagram page a shout out. I'll give a link in the description as well. Because you should follow it if you use Instagram, unlike me, and look at some pretty Go stones. You're listening to Start Point, the show about Go for Go fans away from the board. And now I was browsing Reddit, and then I was very alarmed by some news that I came upon, which was that we are kind of in an education crisis, and the young ones aren't learning. They're not performing better than the previous generation, which is terrible because you expect every generation to perform better than the last. And I'm sure there's a plethora of reasons why that's the case, but this little snippet of Reddit kind of got me concerned. And it led me to a talk by Veritasium. I think I've mentioned Veritasium before on this show. Veritasium is a YouTuber who is into a lot of science and thinking and a lot of stuff like that. But he is very much interested in education, and he's a promoter of education. But what he talked about having to do with this education system stuff, it really deeply made me see how Go relates to all of this, because what he talked about sounded a lot like a lot of stuff I talk about on Starpoint. Now, you guys know I often return to these topics where I like to view Go through a certain lens, and frame it a certain way, different thinking systems, different ways to divide our brains to understand what processes we're going through, whether it's strategy and tactics, or when I come back to very often is the book by Timothy Gallwey, The Inner Game of Tennis, because that book, it's a tennis book, but at the same time, it's very much not a tennis book, and it's adopted by non-tennis players because it talks so much about your inner game, about how to control whatever is going on in your head. I'm a kind of a psychology fan, so I like, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a psychologist, and I really enjoyed studying psychology in school, but alas, that was not my career path. And this stuff that Veritasium, so mind you, it wasn't a Veritasium video. It was a talk by Veritasium. I'll link it, right? It's called What Everyone Gets Wrong About AI and Learning. And he talked about the way we think in a way that really reminded me of how I talk about the way we think when we play Go. And the way he did it was he referenced a book that I think I should have read by now, based on what it's talking about. It's called Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. I think that's how you say his name. But this book I have seen the cover of many, many times. It just screams Malcolm Gladwell. I've mentioned Malcolm Gladwell books in the past. It looks like just an essay about the way we think and different anecdotes about that. I would probably enjoy this book. I'll probably try to read this at a certain point in the future, and then maybe do another episode breaking it down later on. But this really reminded me of some of Malcolm Gladwell's titles, like Blink, which is also kind of about like first impressions and how the brain processes information quickly. But the summary I got from the Veritasium talk with this thinking fast and slow is that it is a matter of thinking with two systems. Now, let me give you an example before I break down the systems. There's two systems, 1 and 2, very much similar sounding to self A and self B, as I talk about in the Inner Game of Tennis commentary. But let me give you how he illustrated this. He went into a street, I guess. He asked people this question, this simple math problem. And when I ask you this math problem, I invite you to just bookmark whatever the first thought in your brain is. And then the question goes like this. A ball and a bat costs $1.10. $1.10. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much is the ball? And of course, what do you think? Right? I think without thinking too hard about it, it's very natural to think the ball is 10 cents, right? The bat costs $1 more than the ball. And then you start thinking a little harder and you're like, wait a second. Does that add up? That's exactly what happened here. The people he was asking were like, the ball's 10 cents. And they sounded very confident in their answer. Meanwhile, watching this video, I'm a lover of riddles and trick questions and linguistic, play on words and things like that. I immediately saw my brain go there first with a 10 cents answer. And I immediately crossed it off because I knew that wasn't the answer. And my brain went to work creating a linear system to solve this problem. Now, I think you can solve this problem with faster means than creating an algebraic linear system. If you do math regularly, especially if you know how to do math, if you've done these things more often, I feel like you'd be a lot quicker to get to it. But for me, I had to create a system in my head involving variables for balls and bats. And then, you have two equations, right? Ball plus bat equals 1.1. And then the other piece of information you have is bat equals ball plus 1. And then you solve the system and you get the cost of both items. The answer being the ball is 5 cents, right? And the bat obviously will then be $1.05. But you do have to do a little work if it doesn't come to you immediately. And so this is how he broke this down. System 1 is this instantaneous, low effort, intuitive. I don't think he used that word, but I would add that in there. Way to solve problems, way for your brain to solve problems using heuristics. The way I would split system 1 and 2 is that system 1 is that instant low effort and uses heuristics, whereas system 2 is active and effortful and you have to execute algorithms. Now, this isn't to say that system 1 is worse than system 2. Not necessarily. System 1 is very useful, and we use heuristics all the time. Heuristics being kind of like shortcuts in our reasoning. If you have to figure something out, you kind of take a shortcut because it's more efficient. For example, we don't use, like, if to illustrate how we don't use algorithms for every single thing in our lives, imagine you heard the sound of a crow, right? A caw. By the way, ravens don't caw. They kind of croak, just to let you know if you didn't know the difference. But crows caw. And so if you heard a crow caw, well, if you heard a caw, you might think there's a crow nearby. You might actually just jump to that conclusion. And actually, I think 99% of the time, you'd be right. I would even round it up to 100% of the time, really, because it's like 99.999, whatever. But that's a heuristic, right? You don't actually know that there's a crow near you. You just heard a crow and you inferred from that there is a crow. But there may not be a crow. So if you want to execute the quote unquote algorithm, maybe algorithm is not really the right flavor of word here, you would look around and see if you can observe that same sound coming from an actual crow that you can see. And you maybe see one and it caws, and then you're like, there's the sound. But that still doesn't fully illustrate that was the sound. You don't fully know, right? This is kind of getting very cerebral and brainy. Maybe better illustrated by that one story joke that I told that one time about the sheep. Anyway, if you guys are curious about that, I'll get to that in another episode. But essentially, we have this system 1, which is instant and just natural, intuitive. System 2, active, hands-on, deducing and figuring out the logic, right? And the point was that we use a lot of system 1 and maybe not a lot of system 2. And how does this relate to Go? Well, this I felt was very much in line with a lot of my discussions about tactics and strategy, self A and self B, but it's not quite the exact same thing, right? So if I look at something like tactics and strategy, you have strategy, which might be analogous to system 1, whereas tactics might be system 2. Because strategy, you think about things, you make decisions, you kind of like have an intuitive sense of what to do. Whereas system 2 tactics, you need to go down and read things out and actually think about whether your plan works. But it's not quite that analogous, right? It's not quite one-to-one as that. Here's why. I think system 1 and 2 actually exists within tactics as well. So if you're looking at tactical situations, you may have an intuitive response on how to respond to a certain attack or something like an attachment or a life and death situation, and it may just tell you like, hey, there's the vital point, kill it, or there's the vital point, live. Whereas system 2 will go in and say, okay, well, is it actually the vital point? Let me read that out. So system 1 and 2 actually exists within tactics, and I think maybe even within strategy as well. So it's not quite one-to-one. And if you want to compare it to self A and self B, let me just remind you what that was. Self A being the conscious self, the verbalized self, the one that says, hey, do this, hey, do that, tighten up on your grip, right? Read this situation. Self B being the one kind of laid back and under or behind the scenes, right? Doing some of that thinking for you. That self B sounds kind of like system 1 to me in this situation. If I were to map the two, right, I would say system 2 is the active one, the one that's saying do this, do that. System 1 being more related to self B, which is the one that's like subconscious and less effortful. And so the whole message of the inner game of tennis was to let system B breathe and learn, right? Because we're using self A a lot. I'm conflating a lot of these terms right now, but I don't think it's quite analogous in the same way as I talk about it. Because self A and self B, it's almost like you're dividing the conscious and the subconscious self, whereas system 2 and system 1, they're more like dividing your brain functions rather than how conscious you are of it. I don't know. But anyway, just to summarize, system 1 is that instantaneous kind of low effort heuristics and instincts System 2 is the active hands-on figuring out stuff. And to fully drive the point home that System 2 is not necessarily better than System 1, Veritasium shared with us a clip from Magnus Carlsen, who said, most of the time, Magnus Carlsen, if you don't know for context, he's the Shinjin Saw of chess. I'd like to actually frame it that way. That would be great, because nobody ever would frame it that way other than a Go podcast. Magnus Carlsen, the Shinjin Saw of chess. Most of the time, I know what to do, he says. Most of the time, I know what to do. I already know what to do. I don't have to figure it out. Now, those words are awesome, coming from the best chess player in the world, because it really gives us an insight on how his brain works and what high skill in a game like this amounts to. Basically, he has his System 1 so trained and so fine-tuned that he doesn't need to use System 2 the vast majority of the time. That's where we want to get to. And it's like, it makes a lot of sense, right? Like I said before with the ball and bat problem, if you do these very simple linear systems problems all the time, you can probably just say, 5 cents, without even thinking about it, without even having to crunch your brain even a little bit. You could probably just hear the question and go, 5 cents, because you're so used to it and you train System 1 how to solve these problems. And this applies to everything. I think that, like, even for a physical sport, let's say baseball, right? We are training System 1 by applying System 2 first. So when you first learn to catch a ball, you need to use System 2 to place your hand where it goes and learn how to curl your fingers in and the right timing. When you're a little kid, right, trying to catch a ball, or maybe even some of us grown adults will have to execute a lot of our System 2 to catch a ball. But that doesn't stop there, right? Let's say you've caught hundreds of balls and you know how to catch a ball very easily without thinking about it. Your System 1 just automatically reaches for the ball, snags it out of the air. Great. Are you a fully fledged, skilled baseball player now? Absolutely not. Baseball is very complicated, and you need to know positioning. You need to know where to throw the ball, and this is just playing in the outfield. This is just the throwing and catching part of baseball. And let's just keep it at that, right? If I am a baseball player and I need to know where to go and stand to catch the ball, there are all these professional techniques that need to be employed. So it's not enough for us to just stop at the instinctive System 2 usage to catch the ball in the first place. We also need to keep our ears open and our minds open to be able to train even more subtle things as we progress, right? So as a baseball player, I might be thinking about, okay, what is the best position to be in as a shortstop? Like, where is the exact place I should be in, depending on the situation, right? If my second baseman leaves his base to do something, like, what responsibility do I have? There's like a lot of things. I don't know anything about baseball, by the way. I played as a kid. But there's a lot of that stuff that goes on. And unless you attempt to train those and listen for the feedback, you will not add more to your System 1. And so when we play Go, I feel like our goal is to nurture our System 1 as much as possible. And I think, in my theory is that the more you use System 2 for the things that System 1 is not used to, the more you will allow System 1 to grow and become more like Magnus Carlsen, where your System 1 does all the work for you. I think you will have seen this in action if you play a very, very strong player and you are putting System 2 at the forefront of your brain and you're trying to figure everything out as hard as you can, really crunching your brain. And your opponent, who's a very strong player, much stronger than you, doesn't seem to be doing any of that. He might be talking to somebody else. They might be just watching something on YouTube while putting down the stones, and somehow they beat you. How does this happen? It's because they have a very, very trained System 1. All the stuff that you're using your brain to do with System 2, they've already have it built into their system. Now, this kind of was a commentary on education at large, and inviting people to fully engage their brains and make sure they utilize System 2 without having to, or rather without just using System 1 and then turning off System 2, because a lot of things we do need to engage with. And this was kind of the theory that was put forth as to why children aren't learning as well nowadays. It's because they're behind the screen. They're behind, AI is becoming more and more of a thing. And a lot of our answers are being served to us rather than having to work for our answers. We just kind of have them at our fingertips. So what do? We have a lot of System 1 engagement, not much System 2 engagement. And real world example, something that I'm guilty of is using my GPS. I am terrible at directions, and I will basically shut off my whole brain and just look at, if my GPS told me to drive into a sketchy place in an alley and take this path that clearly isn't going the way I'm supposed to be going, I very well might go that way because I'm just terrible at it. And I'm guilty of just letting the GPS guide me. Back in the day, we had MapQuest, and that one you had to print out and follow the directions, like take a left on Mulberry Street and then go 7 miles and then take a right on Blue Boulevard or whatever. That actually uses a lot more System 2 than the GPS does, right? You have to think critically. You have to remember things. You have to figure out where left and right. You have to be like, okay, well, if I have this direction and I don't have a co-pilot with me, how am I going to remember all that? Like, what am I going to do? And you have to figure all that out. Am I going to memorize it, or am I going to break this thing into parts? Like, oh, I see. Generally, you go east for a while and then right. So if I miss an exit, I know how to kind of curve around and get to where I need to go. You have to do all of that, right? There's more that you have to do. And with the GPS, funny how I totally forgot about that secondary phase where we actually bought GPS devices. That's like a pretty small window of time that captures an era. But Google Maps, I'm using old terminology, GPS, Google Maps. I'm using Google Maps or Apple Maps all the time. And I should probably try to do more thinking. Maybe this is why I'm bad at directions. I don't use my System 2 to figure stuff out. And so with Go, it's the same thing where if I'm constantly using System 1, just using the same intuitive moves that I've always been using and refusing to figure stuff out, then I will not improve. And I think that you might actually fall into the trap of thinking that you're using System 2 a lot. And maybe you are in a way, but if you're using System 2 in the same way all the time, reading the same kinds of things and never questioning the strategic implications, never trying new things, never attempting other applications of your System 2, you might still be caught in that same rut. So, okay, another thing that he talked about is how we optimize our thinking in these situations. And one of the things that he said was that we should eliminate extraneous cognitive load, meaning we get rid of all the stuff that our brains are being occupied with that is not related to the task at hand. So what comes to mind is stuff like distracting noises, right? Playing in a peaceful environment. I know some of you like to play Go with music playing in the background. I don't know how you do it because I think that would definitely be distracting for me. And I think cognitively speaking, it would be a slight load on your brain to have to process that music while playing Go. So it's probably better not to have extra things. This is a lesson in life in general, right? If you're trying to focus on doing something, it's better to eliminate as many distractions as possible. And that's kind of something that our phones are, doing, is distracting us with all this other content while we're trying to do other tasks. Another thing that comes to mind is how the stones appear on the board. If there's not enough contrast, or if the stones are irregularly shaped, or the board is squiggly or irregular, all that stuff can really distract our conversation and make our brains work harder to do the same thing, and maybe it'll lead to a worse performance in our Go game. Now, there's this thing that Smash Bros. Players say, it's called no Johns, which means don't have excuses for losing. But one time I played a chess game, and the chess pieces were very beautifully. It was a set that my wife gave me, and they're very like intricate Roman like mythology pieces, and it's like Roman kind of columns for the rooks and things like that. And there's like, I think there's like winged horses and stuff like Pegasus. Very beautiful, but I felt like I lost the game because those pieces were distracting. And that's cognitive load, right? I need to process an extra step to figure out, and it's not that much more work, but to figure out which piece is what. And for me, someone who actually is not a great chess player, that might even be a bigger influence. Maybe you shouldn't have Starpoint on in the background. It hurts to say it, but when you're playing Go, maybe you shouldn't be listening to this podcast. Maybe this is distracting you. And maybe this thought right now is going to lose you the current game you're playing. May you win the game. I'm sorry if I caused you to lose, but take this as a lesson, right? So a lot of stuff we can do to optimize our thinking. But here's the challenge with Go, the game of Go itself. We can break things down into system 1 and 2 as much as we would like. And this works for many things, right? If you're looking at most things, right? Let's say I'm playing music and I'm learning a piece. If I hit a wrong note, I can kind of isolate that. And if I'm using muscle memory, aka system 1, to play this music, I can be like, well, I'm making a mistake at that one passage. Let me figure this out with system 2 and actually maybe rethink the fingering that I'm using. Maybe I will just break down the problem and say, I want to practice that segment. A lot of ways you can use system 1 and 2 in other applications. But the thing with Go is a lot of the system 1 thinking that we're building does not have a clear system 2 application. For example, you know the proverb, Hane at the head of 2 stones, right? That proverb, that's why we know, okay, if you have like 2 stones aligned with each other and then it's your turn, you should Hane at the head of it because it's just good. And the more games you play, the more you realize that is true. But how would you ever figure that out on your own? How would you ever build that into your system 1 without ever having like a system 2 application to solve that, right? How much feedback can you really get from Haneing at the head of 2 stones? It's very difficult, right? You can argue like, yes, it's a very big advantage, and everyone who is experienced in Go understands that it's a very big advantage to Hane at the head of 2 stones. But it's kind of like really hard to figure out why and really logically say why. If you look at a reading problem, like a life and death problem, yeah, that will definitely train your system 1. After you use your system 2 to figure out those life and death problems with yes or no answers, your system 1 will eventually be faster at solving those problems. But what about all these esoteric moves that just are very difficult to pinpoint why it's good? Like a lot of Go is this really nebulous system 1 that just knows, this is obviously the move here. And you're just like, why? It's like, because it's a strong move. It's a great move. And you're like, why? Well, I don't know. It's thick. And you're like, how do you know it's thick? Because it's hard to kill. And it's just, I don't know. It seems very difficult. And so, we have to rely on things like proverbs. We have to watch professional games and game reviews to really pick up on what these weird nebulous things are and why it's so hard to grasp them. And that's why it's so hard to play Go. And that's why, as I listened to this talk, I felt more and more like Go is the answer. Go is the solution. Go is a thinking, encouraging game. And that is why a lot of people don't play Go. People don't like using System 2. Believe it or not, people hate doing math problems. You tell them, 4 times 5, and they'll be like, happy to say 20, right? You say, well, what's 4.1 times 5.7? Well, okay, I don't want to answer that question. I'm busy, right? Although I have the capability to answer that question. I just have to take out a piece of paper. No, not a piece of paper. People will take out their phones when their calculator, calculate it out. No more System 2. Let's get rid of all the System 2. That's kind of the mentality of today, and that's maybe a little bit of a problem. The challenge of Go is what is so enticing about Go, and yet so off-putting about Go. So I encourage you to play Go because it really forces you to use all of your brain and figure out problems on your own, where this whole world is revolving around figuring out all of your problems for you, right? You look at, even in advertising, everyone wants to just solve your problems and tell you not to think about anything. Why? We should always think about things. We should try to think about the solutions to our problems before we defer to somebody else. Sometimes we will find novel things that those other people or other AI may not have ever thought of. I encourage you to try to practice intentional thinking, not only in your Go games, but in your whole life as well. I have a love-hate relationship with AI, LLMs in particular. I know they can be very useful for various things, but I always get to the point where I ask it too many questions and I realize how wrong it is about so many things and how misled I've been about things. It just makes me want to stop using it, and then I kind of creep back in, and then I start using it again, and I'm forming a relationship with it, and I'm feeling like I need to know how to use it more smartly. I think it's best to use for the widely covered, most general topics. If you start getting into the nitty gritty and things about your own particular situation, or even other people's particular situations, it starts to fall apart. And the more nitty gritty it is, it seems to be more prone to failure. So best to use for things like, general knowledge, right? Something you would find in an encyclopedia or something like that. I feel like is usually the best source. I've had a recent experience where I was kind of testing it. I was like, or half testing it, but half not. Like I figured out the problem on my own through my own experimentation. And then I asked the AI, hey, what do you think about that? And then it was completely wrong. So I said, are you sure about that? Check your answer. And it was like, no, I insist. This is the way it is. And then I was like, okay, check it one more time. And he's like, oh, you know what? You're right. I was wrong. And so that just goes to show it's just, I don't know. I think the thing is like human beings can also be wrong. But I think that human beings are a little more accountable in a way. Well, anyway, that's a little short AI spiel, but it's time for the DDK Advice Corner. And the tip of the day is Tanuki. I don't know. Have I not done this before? I feel like, Tanuki, obviously that is a huge DDK Advice Corner tip. I don't know why I've never done this before, but Tanuki means if you are playing out a sequence or a fight or whatever, what have you locally in a part of the board, Tanuki means go away, play somewhere else without resolving what was going on there. It's a very valuable thing to do. And the stronger you get, the more you will Tanuki. Because Tanuki isn't just for when there's nothing left to do. Tanuki isn't supposed to be for, oh, we're done with this sequence, now I'm going to move on. Tanuki is a valid active move as well in the middle of a sequence when you are expected to do something else in that local area. But Tanuki says, you know what? I think something else is more important. Something else is more valuable, more urgent, and I'm going to go here. instead of playing, and it may make you feel very uncomfortable because you left. It's like you're in the middle of a conversation and they say, so yeah, I went to a barbecue last weekend. Have you ever been to Jim's house? And then you say, I like sci-fi. Sci-fi is a great book, topic, genre. Okay, your Tanuki may not always be a good move, but the decision to Tanuki and the move that you use on the Tanuki may be two separate things you can separate. But be sure to try Tanukiing. Tanuki is a very valuable and valid move that can really strengthen your game, and knowing when to Tanuki is invaluable. And now it's time for listener mail. Graybeard Go writes, Hi Justin, quoting you from episode 127, listener mail. And the quote is, I've never encountered a game on Fox that felt like it was a bot. Okay, and Graybeard Go responds, that may be so, but if you've played at the Q level on Fox in the last few years, you've almost certainly played a bot that tries to imitate that player's level. I call these dumb bots. On Fox, the first 3 games of a new Q account are always played against dumb bots. They accept your fast matching request immediately, and they're unavoidable. Well, considering that it's been a couple years since I played a game on Fox, and I have been kind of at more of the Dawn level here, it's possible I missed these dumb bots, as you say, and I haven't created a new account in I don't know how long. To avoid dumb bots, from Game 4 on, be sure to cancel your fast matching request before the 20 seconds remaining mark. Dumb bots always accept games after exactly 10 seconds, 15 seconds for the initial rank. Check the opponent's user profile by clicking their avatar image, and if their current results, games played at their current rank, are in the thousands or higher, they're definitely a dumb bot. What human plays thousands of games without ever going up or down in rank? There are other ways to identify dumb bots on Fox, but this is sufficient. Thanks for the pods, Graybeard Go, aka Dave, a Canadian living in Japan. Thank you for writing in and letting me know about the dumb bots. Though I have definitely played those accounts with, like, I don't know if I've seen thousands. It's either thousands or hundreds, but I always see the explanation from people that those are club accounts. Like, those were like computers set up in some space for people to play and log in. I don't know if that's true, but usually when I go into the history, I do see some fluctuation in rank. That's kind of one of the ways I maybe I shouldn't do this, but I value or devalue my win based on that. So if I look in a game and I'm playing a Dawn player and then I lose, and then I look in their profile and it's like they used to be a 3 Dawn, I'm like, you know what? I lost to a 3 Dawn. It's okay. But anyway, if anyone has more insight on this topic, let me know. And thank you, Graybeard Go, for writing in. Sadaharu writes, one of my biggest flaws last time was that I used to think too much, often to the point of losing by time in tournaments with absolute time controls. After that, I tried to think less consciously, but the downside is that sometimes I make blunders because I thought too little. Go is a game of balance after all, but finding the balance is always difficult. Very well said, Sadaharu. That's like a meta game of, like, kind of our topic today, right? How much of System 1 should you use? How much System 2 should you use, right? You start using System 2 too much, and you will lose on time, right? That's why you can't use System 2 100% of the time. It's just impossible. And yet when you use System 1 too much, you're just going to not find the right move sometimes because you just didn't think about it enough. So that's another level of intuition, to know when to employ your employees of the brain and get to work on these problems. Thanks for writing in, Sadaharu. And we have Baraka Meek writing, I was having a hard time with always attacking so much that all those cuts and built up weaknesses led me to losing often. What helped me was seeing that the AI seemingly almost never cuts, and so I just play to extend and only cut when I can read out the kill. This has led to my ranking up. Less is more sometimes. Well, congrats on ranking up. Although AI, if you're targeting the AI, you are getting better at killing AI. But I would encourage you to maybe try seeing what happens when you shift that strategy into a human opponent. I'd be curious how that would turn out. Thanks for writing in again, Baraka Meek. And the question of the week this week is, do you feel like you use enough of your System 2? during a game, or do you feel like you use too much System 1 or vice versa? Do you have any ideas on how to balance those two better and when to use System 2 and when not to? If you want to share your thoughts on that question, or if you have a Go story you want to share or have anything you want to ask me, leave a comment wherever you found this episode or email me directly at starpointpaduk@gmail.com. That's starpointbaduk@gmail.com. If you're a YouTube listener, I would greatly appreciate a like and a subscribe if you haven't already. If you're a podcast listener, reviews and ratings and follows also help. A very special thank you to James B., Brendan S., Tristan, Jeff H., and Tyraniton and Andrew P. for supporting Starpoint. If you want to support the show, go to kofi.com/starpointpaduk, that's ko-fi, or check out the Starpoint store at store.starpointpaduk.com. And come on over to the Discord. You can find the link in the description and join the community of Starpoint listeners. Now, last week I told you about an amazing Street Fighter move from the character Ryu. This week I'm going to share with you a move that Ken has, where he punches up on his victim in a rising motion, and a bunch of Go stones spill out of his opponent, and he says, "Go, you can." Thanks for listening. Keep playing Go.